Dear members, dear guests, welcome to our new webinar. For those who don't know me, I am Barbara Faranik-Matonet, founder and president of the Art Circle. Today we will begin a new series called Arts and Lights. This new series will be composed of 3 chapters. Our first one will be focusing on light, shadow, movement, and their interaction with simple elements and the spectator. We are very honored for this first chapter to have with us Massimilano Moro. Our second chapter will be next week with the Dutch artist Lonneke Gordijn, founder of Studio Drift. As I just said, tonight we are privileged to have with us Massimilano Moro. Massimilano is an award-winning light and shadow artist born in Italy. He navigates between Lugano and Barcelona. He produces captivating light work of art, playing with our perception of the invisible. But I will leave the pleasure to our moderator to better introduce him. Massimilano, thank you very much for accepting our invitation tonight. I know how passionate you are, and I have no doubt that today's presentation will be captivating. To better introduce Massimilano, we have today the pleasure to welcome Sara Agudo Milan. Sara is an artist and researcher from Barcelona. She graduated in art and design at the Escola Massana and completed a master in artistic production and research at the Faculty of Fine Arts in Barcelona. Before starting, I have a few administrative matters. First of all, please could you all mute your microphone? And may I ask you to address your question by writing them on the chat function. At the end of the presentation, Sarah will ask our question for us. Sarah, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Barbara, for the presentation, and welcome again, everyone, to the first session of the fall program. I would like to thank also Maria Jose and the Art Circle to invite us. And well, it's a huge pleasure for me to be here with all of you, discussing about the work of an artist I admire so much. So I'm going to make a brief presentation of Massimilano Moro's work trajectory, and then we're going to open a dialogue and make a virtual studio visit. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about Massimilano. Barbara made a brief presentation, but well, Massimilano Moro is an artist from Switzerland, and he's currently living between Barcelona and Lugano. He's a sculptor who worked with light, color, and movement, using shadows as his main character. In that sense, in his sculptures, he models the light to give color to the shadows. His artistic training began at Escola Massana in Barcelona, where he studied sculpture, and later he graduated in art and design. Then he obtains the master in architectural lighting at the European Institute of Design in Barcelona, where he teaches art light classes. He has shown his work in many exhibitions and cities as Barcelona, Palermo, Milan, Rome, Lugano, Padua, Mansasiapnica, among others. And in 2017, he has chosen Emergent Light Artist Design of the Year by the LIT Award. So let's give a warm welcome to Massimilano. Can you turn on your microphone?
Yes. Hello everyone. Thank you for being here.
Hello.
Here in Zoom.
Before you start talking about your work, would you like to show us some of your references to make a kind of a cartography of what you understand as light art?
Of course, and this is something I do with pleasure, because when I started investigating light and light art, I found out that it was not incomplete, but there was a lot more to tell than what was written in most of the books. So I started investigating, because from the beginning, I realized that when you search light art in Google, it was 10 years ago, more or less, almost only 4 artists appeared: James Turrell, Olafur Eliasson, Anthony McCall, and Dan Flavin. Basically, if you saw something that was like a imaginary volume, was Turrell. If there was some kind of science included, was Eliasson. If there were neons in the rooms, it was Dan Flavin. And if it was foggy and drawing and light was kind of materic, was Anthony McCall. So, but this is very recent, so I started digging and see from the beginning what happened with artificial light, that it's the medium I'm using, and I wanted to see who was before me and what they did. So actually the research started a long time ago in the 1730. This is a comic from the time, because a strange priest tried to translate music to color. So he basically inaugurated a series of people that investigated how to each note a color corresponded, and this went on for many years until in 1879, a German researcher invented something that was very cool and dangerous. It was a piano with gas, a pyrophone. Every note had a color. Every key of this piano emitted a light flame of different colors. Of course, there is no one of these remained because they all burned down. But it's interesting to see that this research going towards light and music. But there's another one that interests me more. This is the first with electric light. This is a very basic piano with colors, and we don't know how it really was because this one also disappeared. But it was the beginning of something that would be it would grow a lot from here, because after this, we can go to the 1910, and this is a Russian composer that for the first time put the word light on a sheet music. And he said this composition, this opera, was a huge concert with light effects, everything in the whole ambient. This is the first one, the first thing we know about probably performing art and music with electric lights. But there was a little problem. So his technical materials were like 10 light bulbs, and the light bulbs from that age were not as powerful as ours, but also for our time, this would be not enough to fill a theater. But he managed to go to New York to present it, and it was a huge fiasco. Nobody liked it because, of course, it was in the dark. But he asked people to wear white, and this was a first in performative arts, probably, to the composer asking people to wear certain to a dress code for enhancing light. But from here, a very interesting person, an inventor from Denmark, started investigating, after seeing this concert, the power of a light bulb and things you put in front of it. So he started in the 20s, he started investigating, and until the 30s, he perfectioned a very complex machine. He was an inventor, so he patented it, and now we can see what was in his mindset. But this is the least interesting part, also very interesting, because the effect was this one. In the 30s, he had this machine that played abstract light and reflections on a screen. This is very early. This is looks very contemporary, but it's almost 100 years ago, and it still amazes me that in that time he invented something like this. He was so passionate about his invention that he opened a light theater institute in New York, and he investigated a lot until his death. He worked a lot only on light and reflections, and he called his art Lumia, because he was convinced that altogether with the 7 normal arts, light was the 8th one, and he spent a lot of energy on this. He didn't have a lot of recognition until the 70s, and then he got forgotten again until 2 years ago that the Yale University did a retrospective on him, and we can see how we can finally see some videos of this sculpture that still works when plugged on. And this amazes me when I see the one on the right. That is from the 1928, and it really looks like from 1 year ago or 2 years ago. This really fascinated me. And then, still in the 30s, we have the first public light sculpture, and this is a very important connection for me because it was requested by the Edison factory in Prague. They were building light bulbs and didn't advertise. So they asked this sculpture to build something that was going to be put in the front of the factory. And this is the first public light sculpture we have in history. And then in the same year, we got to what is normally called the beginning of light art with Laszlo Moholy-Nagy and the Lichtraum modulator. And in all the books, light art starts here. But as we saw, and I saw, and I just show you some of the people that investigated before, there was a lot of process coming. But Moholy-Nagy was the first one to understand the possibility of light without music, without composition, just light as material itself to change the space. So normally we see the picture in black and white, but his idea was more like this one. It was a sculpture in movement with a lot of noise actually, but it was turning with reflection. And in his idea, and actually when you see one working in some museums now, you see the space changes because there's shadows everywhere. So he was the first one to understand the power of changing a room just with light. And he put this at service also to theater because he was appointed by the Berlin Theater to do some scenographies. And he did two that really are striking to me because actually he managed with shadow to make something bigger than it was. It was the first time that with shadow he was used to enhance something instead of putting a bad meaning to it like we were used in the Western world. So after the 30s, basically nothing happens, and we have to skip the war and go to the 60s to see something happening. And it's curious because the first cybernetic sculpture is the first one with sensor is basically a Lichtraum modulator with sensors that responded to the spectator. And this was the first time an electronic device was installed in a museum, in Nicola Schoeffer. And he also did the first cybernetic tower. So that tower, the tower on the right, it's very tall, it's in Belgium, it still works. I still didn't understand what it really does, but it moves with people behind. So it was very enhanced for the time because we are still thinking about the 60s. And then finally, we go to the one that now has a lot of consideration, but until 10 years ago was kind of forgotten. Julio Leparc, we can call him the king of caustics, the science of reflections, because he managed to do something in sculpture that were amazing by just using one light bulb and some kind of reflection sheets. For example, he managed to put motors and things in movement, joining the op art and the kinetic art movement, but giving light and reflections a huge space in the viewer's area. This is always moving, and it's incredible to see. I was in Paris in 2014. Was a re-edition of a sculpture he did, and it looks so contemporary that you cannot believe it was done 50 years ago. It's just one light bulb and reflection around a circle, and it's completely abstract, but really captivating. It has a very material approach. But then I wanted to show you this one briefly because Group Zero in Germany in the 60s wanted to start art from scratch. That's why Zero. They wanted to eliminate everything. They wanted to forget everything. And to start, they chose light as material. This for me is very important because as a sculptor working with light, this is a good reference of that. When you want to start something from nothing, you start with light. So light is a very important material in our lives, and it should be in art too. And also, they started a very nice trend. It was doing exhibition during the night, not in museums, but in empty buildings. So they started occupying empty buildings in Berlin and in Stuttgart and doing exhibition at night. There was a kind of a first and was very interesting. But what interests me is of these brief references is that every time there is a technical progress, a lot of art comes out. This is works for light, this works for everything, for paintings, for everything. But I put this for me because I wanted to see where we are now. So I realize now with the LED, we are in a new process that we finally overcome all the other light that has been before. And now we are in a very important point. And you can see why. This is Olaf Eliasson, one of the first sculptures he did, and that was on the right is one of the last ones. You can see the difference in the shadow treatment. The left, making shadows in the 90s was complex thing. You needed light theaters, you need big machines, and the definition was not very good. Now, with LED, we have very small points, and this allows us to take control of the shadows. So with the very small light, it's powerful enough, and it has enough definition to fill a room. So for me, this research that I showed you, I did it for me at the beginning because I wanted to be sure that it wasn't a path that had some future. And as I realized we are at the beginning of the LED used in art, I started investigating a lot more because what interested me, and this is me, is how we can work with shadows, how shadows and light can go along. Because until now, there was light, and then there was his dark thing, was his absence. It's not very good thing was the shadow. It was not something that was controllable, so he imputed some fear. It was not something you welcomed. In architecture, it was kind of a nightmare. And now we can control it. And with LED, also color appeared. We're not using white light with filters. We are making pure color. So the spectrum of color is so pure, it's like almost painting. So that's what interests me, and that's how my research actually took off and started to a nice point. Because I realized I was able to give pictorial characteristic to a shadow that's something that normally is empty. So by giving volume to something that doesn't exist, sounded very interesting to me, and I started going, and I still haven't stopped getting amazed by what you can do with a simple light and its shadows. Because my goal at the beginning of the research was to be able to treat light and shadow at the same level, not one subsequent to the other. And that's what I achieved by adding colors and adding double shadows and modulating the space in a way you can definitely see that they are two elements in relation, in a pair relation. So until here, I was very confident of my work. I started doing a lot of exhibition that actually, as light is super duper flexible, it feels everything. Every time you go to a different space, it changes. So I started doing as many exhibitions as possible to be able to investigate in its real place, not just in the studio. So my geography of light started from very far with a monk playing piano with some candles, and we got here where shadow is not to be frightened anymore and it's under control. So for me, it's a very nice step, and that's why I'm very happy to share it, because it's kind of new, it's contemporary, but it's new for everybody. So that's a nice thing to share.
Well, thank you, Massimiliano, to make this tour from your references. Now, I would like to discuss some of your recent exhibitions and projects. I think we're going to start with Monstera Deliciosa. And actually, we want to make a kind of an ellipsis with the plants as a main element. Monstera Deliciosa, it's from 2016, really. And I was wondering if you can tell us about the relation between plants and artificiality in your work.
Of course, this is a very interesting topic, and I still have things to discuss, because when using electric light, you're using artificial light. We're not using the sun, so everything I do is artificial. But what happens when you add a real element, like a plant, for example, a living element? Happens something very strange and very captivating to the eye, because you see the real object, the real plant, you realize it's alive, you realize its nature, but its shadows has a characteristic that you don't expect. In this case, for example, it was much bigger. This building was an abandoned building in Palermo. It's 7 meters tall, and actually it was my first exhibition, solo exhibition, and it was very interesting because I could manage to fill a huge room, there was dead room, with plants and make it alive for people to spend time. And this artificiality was present because you realize that what you were seeing was coming from different light source that was not the shadow. First of all, because we are used to see the shadow on the floor, and I put shadows on a wall. This change of perspective already gives you the point of view that I want to share. When you see something projected on a wall, you realize it's not natural. Somehow, you don't realize it, but you feel it. It's something that's strange. But having the plant in front, it's something you know. It doesn't frighten you. You immediately connect to it, and you start pointing towards and how you see different things, because remembering shadows are the absence of light. In this case of a plant, you're not seeing the actual leaf. You're seeing the space that goes between the leaves. So it's a different way of showing how a plant is. And this work, I really like doing it, because I love plants. And by putting shadows to it, I never stop putting shadows to plants, neither in my house. I always have shadows everywhere, because it allows me to see more of the plant. So I have nature, and my artificial point of view actually enhance what's the power of the plant.
Yeah, that's it. In the same year, you create Gated Turkey, right?
Yeah.
With that piece, I asked, what is the place that the time occupies in your work? And I think I have a video, so you can start talking about that, and I think I'm gonna change.
Of course. This was a very important exhibition to me, because it was in a place that was from many years ago. It was an ancient Jewish bath space within Syracuse, and it was destroyed many years ago, and now they found it and they wanted to show it again. And it was done in a very, this part of the public was done in a very archaeological way. It was a simple, everything was lit, and you could not feel what was the age of that place. For example, this place was hand carved by hand. Everything was built by hand, and with the lightning they put, it was not possible to see that. Also, you saw everything at the same time, and it kind of lost its magic. So when you ask time in my sculptures, I use it for two. I can talk about it in two different ways. One is the time present in the space, during our time, that we know sometimes you feel like it goes slower, it goes faster. You never, in each building, you have a different feeling of what you are and what you're doing there. But with lightning, you can change it. And that's what I like about the mood changing, and how you can actually give a feeling of how old is a place. And in this case, was just by a simple movement, a simple time and rhythm of my sculpture that showed just little by little. So you cannot see all the place in time. And when it's like that, I force somehow the spectator to concentrate in details. And this is something light is perfect to do. I can concentrate the look of the spectator to something I want to show. So in this case, I wanted to show little by little a vertical line of light passing by, so you can actually see the hand carving. And this connected to also to the time of being down there, because it was 30 meters below Earth. It was very humid. It was a very strange place. And entering out with my installation was kind of, I think it was nearer on what it was before. So with light, I kind of traveled back in time. And it was very interesting, and well, it was complicated because very few people could enter at a time. So there was a long waiting list, and when you went down the stairs, you were like really going downstairs, and was feeling this entering the earth.
Okay.
Dark.
Now it's working.
Okay. And also, you had water. Just this is not about time, but this is about reflection. I just like to see this one because there were 3 holes in the space, and with the normal lighting, they were just dark. You could not see anything. It was just a black mirror. And by indirect illumination, you could actually see what light when it's a perfect mirror. So when you entered and you looked better at what you were in the room, you could actually see the floor reflecting the ceiling. And when you change this perspective, it's like also when putting the shadows on the wall, putting the ceiling on the floor and the floor on the ceiling really change perspective and give the look to a different point of view. And it's very important. And after this, I started adding mirrors to my exhibition because sometimes I need another point of view.
Okay, next year you made the exhibition Terciopelo in Palermo. So how do you determine the rhythm and the speed in your sculptures?
This was the first exhibition where I actually put three of the same sculptures, same kind of sculpture in the same space. It was a space that allowed it because they had a lot of columns. It was again an ancient building. It was kind of magic on its own. But I wanted to create a dialogue between my sculptures in a way that the spectator first saw one and then by coming back, he saw the others. But I realized that if I put the same visual rhythm to all the three, they didn't work. They were creating a dialogue. They were just going by themselves. So what I started investigating here, and was a very important exhibition for me because working in the same space was very important. I realized that what I always had in my hands was the possibility to do with the one main rhythm, several sub-rhythms. The rhythm of the shadow can be different than the rhythm of the reflections. It can be different than the rhythm of the light moving. So I started adding elements to have the impression, the visual impression of different rhythms that were connecting one to the others. So in this exhibition, I actually realized I can have the motors that goes at the same speed, and it's the speed I found out that works for me. It's not too fast because you don't get seasick, and it's not too slow to bore. There's an exact point where speed is correct for me. And when I say correct for me, it's for my eye, because I build everything to be correct for when I look at it and then I share, but it needs to be in order to work, it needs to be good for me. So I started this research about how different it is when you have one element that it's in rotation or two elements on several elements. And this leads to all the sculptures that I do today are rooted in this exhibition where I actually had the power to mix them.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Coming to this year, you made propositions for a poetic ecosystem. Since most of your proposals are plain site-specific, what is the influence of the space in your work?
I think, well, this is a very nice exhibition that some of the people that are in the room saw. And it's the perfect example of how the space and light goes together. Normally when we say set specific, it sounds very complex. It sounds like it was done on purpose for that place. And it's true. But with light, it's impossible to do something that's not site specific, because as light reacts to all the other elements that are in the space, the lighting that from the natural lighting, the artificial lighting, the color of the surfaces, every time you put a light in a place, it's site specific. So when I realized that, I stopped saying that my artworks are site specific, but they really are. In this case, it was the first time I changed culture and continent, because until now I always did something in the Western world. And it was very interesting for me because I went there and lighting was completely different. So I saw the picture of this place, but I didn't realize when it was used, how was lighting around. It was very difficult for me from Switzerland to imagine how Jeddah was. So when I got there, I had a project in mind. And of course, as it's site specific and I'm forced to do site specific, I had to change it, because normally it was used, the idea was to create a line of light, but it was filling all the space, and I had to reduce light because lighting was in the outside was very dim. So I had to adapt to it. And in this case, it was curious because it's not my exhibition. I was at service to somebody because they asked me to create a room, an ambient where other artists dialogue. So the light also had to be in accordance to the space, but also it had to be in a different importance, because it needed to be second place. So, and this was troublesome for me because light is the first thing we see. When we are like flies, we are like insects, we are like everybody. when you put a light somewhere, you look at it, it's instinctive. So how did you do that the light is the second thing you see? And this was working the space. I realized I had to do different levels to build this line of color to illuminate the whole building and giving space to the rest. But it had to be taking care of this site-specific and light-specific and situation-specific. But this is, can say complex, but it's very immediate, because when you turn on the light, you see what's different and what works, it doesn't work. With experience, of course, I can see faster, but it's something, light is something that's very near. It's something we are surrounded by. It's something that we maybe think we don't know it, but we know it very well, because without light, we couldn't see anything. We couldn't perceive volumes. We couldn't perceive anything. So site-specific and light just goes along perfect. Well, this is the interior, and I had to do some light changes, light heights change, because we wanted to show the rooms. And well, the goal also was to show 6 artists in a place where that's 24 rooms. So there were like 18 empty rooms that had to be hidden. And with lights, you can hide very well things, because you just turn off the light and magically disappear. It's fantastic because it doesn't require any effort or any touch to the structure. This is very important to me, the not touching anything, because normally when I go to an exhibition, I try to enter and leave without leaving trace. Because this power of light, you can modify everything. You can make people don't realize where they are. And when you turn it off, it's like it never existed. And it's beautiful, it's light. It's light also in a weight sense. You don't feel you don't have to bring heavy things. You just change it by turning something on. And for me, it's beautiful. Okay.
So this year, you had the exhibition Composiciones in Barcelona. How did you adapt your huge sculptures and installation into interior spaces, such as homes or small galleries like that?
Well, this is a question I have been asked a lot. If people visit the exhibition and they say, okay, but how does it work if I want one? And this is an answer we try to give with my gallery in Barcelona, LB Contemporary. And I try to do an exhibition that it's still site-specific, because it's a lot of small sculptures, the dialogue between each of them. But I wanted to focus, instead of the space around, I wanted to create something smaller that invited you to concentrate on details of light. So for example, on the one of the right, it's just a shift in the surface, and you have actually, magically, you have 2 triangles. But to see them, you have to focus on it, and it's very small. It's a piece like this, but it occupies a visual of 1.5 meters, because light is not a painting. So this is very interesting for a house. I love working in houses and insert my sculpture in homes and private places, because you can actually add a light, a small point that during the dark, it's very present. But if you turn on a light, it is a kind of slowly disappear until the presence you want to have. Until some years ago, light art was considered very complex and that it needed a dark environment. And now I can say that my sculpture works much better with light and with other lights around, because the dialogues they establish, it's much interesting than being in a white dark cube. And white dark, yes, it works, because something that's white, if you turn off the light, it becomes dark. So I created, this was the same time I was in Jeddah. I was thinking about this exhibition. So you can see I have to adapt to everything and to different places. And the sculpture on the left actually started a new point of my research that I'm going to show you now in short. And it's how a small thing, it's an A5, hang to a wall, can fill a whole room. And with movement, it's very captivating. And this exhibition was the first one that I actually saw many of my artworks in the same space. And I could manage to give each of them its own rhythm, its own time, its own reason of being there. And it was very interesting because I didn't thought it could be possible. When they asked me this proposal, I was kind of skeptic because I like more when it's a feeling installation. But in this case, I managed the same thing with small points, and it was very important because it was more to the public. It was more immediate to see that it's not something that's how do you say it? Well, I cannot have this because I don't have space. It goes everywhere. So this was the perfect place to show it.
Okay, we have a video of composition.
But we can skip it. We can go to the, because I have one behind. So yeah. I show it, yes, because I don't know time wise how we are. So I wanted to be there. But I can show you this one in real life too. So you can skip it.
Okay, we are lucky.
Well, this is the translation. For example, well, we can do it. Okay, now yeah, I wanted to skip it, but I cannot resist it. If you go to the one before, this is a huge sculpture. This is 3 meters by 3. It occupies the whole building, and it's very complex. It's beautiful to look at, but it's complex. It doesn't fit in a home. So a lot of people ask me, how do you translate this to a different environment? And the answer is below. Light, you can go down, next one. Light adapts to everything you put, the shadows are everything you put in front of a light. So in a house, we have flowers, we have different objects. And when you put it in front of a light, in one of my lights especially, because it works very well with the shadow, you create a different setting. So I like to make sculptures that are also the user, the buyer is going to be able to interact with it. I just serve the mark, and then it's up to people who actually live with it to decide how to use it. Because if light feels everything, it's site specific everywhere, and it's so flexible. Also, when it goes to somebody else, it's also person side somehow. Everyone see different things, so especially with color. So I never like to close to something. I prefer to leave it open, and I love with plants, and I have many with flowers and plants because it just feels right to have it. And by talking about plants, I think we can talk about our project.
Yes, yes, actually, last month on the occasion of the end of my exhibition to talk about trees at Chiquita Room in Barcelona, we made a collaboration that takes the form of a light installation based on plants. Well, actually, Chiquita Room is a new center of contemporary art and creation that develops its activity as a gallery, residency for artists, and publisher of artist books. It's focused on interdisciplinary and collective work, and he had a desire of support local and international artists. So Laura, which is the gallerist, was so happy to collaborate with Massimiliano and working on that project. And yeah, to talk about trees is a project that reflects on the way we perceive of our current relation with the nature and climate crisis. Parts, the title actually, parts of the verse from a poem, What Kind of Times Are These by Adrian Rieck, who responds the poem To Those Who Follow in Our Wake by Bertolt Brecht, where he wonders if talking about trees in dark times is not a crime because it implies silencing so much injustice happening in the same time. Some years later, Adrian Rieck answers that to listen is necessary to talk about trees. So these exhibitions questions what we value and how this choice conditions our relationship with the environment, meeting us to rethink what we don't pay attention to actually. As you can see in the photographs, it was formed by a publication displayed in, yes, it was formed by a publication displayed in the space, a series of drawings, photographs, and an ephemeral installation of plant cuttings. Actually, this photograph is from the last day, from the finissage. So all the plants were a takeaway of the visitors. So from this installation of plants, we began the dialogue with the work of Massimiliano. if you want to tell more about your intervention, Massimiliano.
Yeah, because I think you answer, so it could be a question, why are we showing you this? And this is because to talk about trees is actually a question I did to myself a lot of time, because my work is very, how do you say, it could look empty because it's just looking. So it's, well, it's hypnotic. It can be seen a little bit as naive. Sometimes they told me, but it's because I just sometimes being able to just look and do nothing else and not give a different meaning of what I'm showing. I'm showing a shadow or something, and it's beautiful. It has enough meaning to me. So when when I was working with Sarah of this project, I realized her questions were the same questions I'm doing, and this was the answer. Is it worth to do a sculpture that is so aesthetic that can fade away all the meaning it has? And for me, it was the answer, yes. I need this. I need to be able to do something that can be looked at and nothing else. So the two projects connected, and there was at the end we did this installation that where I took Sarah's plans and I did two sculptures just for the last 2 days of the exhibition, and it actually showed me that light is not can be a secondary character. It can add something to a room that already has something. Because in this case, Sarah had the exhibition for 2 months. It was already being talked about. It was already seen. So it was with light, I could add something more. So we used the empty spaces because this gallery also has a residency. So there was a sleeping room and a kitchen. So I went to the space that were not used for the exhibition, and I just put the light on with the same plans Sarah used, and we generated a different dialogue that started and ended with the same questions and same answers, but took a very different path because Sarah went to language. And when I got there, I just went with aesthetic. But actually the roots were the same. And it was very, very interesting for me to see people that already saw the exhibition, came back and see the exhibition again. And I realized that light really can change your perspective of things. And it was the end. It was a mirror that was in the beginning and on the end, because a mirror and light also goes together, because actually for us, a light and the light in a mirror is the same. And this, when I realized this, that a light in a mirror is like having two lights, it really changes perspective. And also mirrors can show where you are, because in this case, we place the mirror in a way that spectator could see themselves inside. So this project with plants and light got back to the first exhibition I did, Monster Deliciosa. We saw the pictures about plants, and also talk along another artist that were doing another kind of exhibition. And this showed me how versatile and how flexible light can be. And this gave me the opportunity to be able to not doing an exhibition by myself that I liked a lot, but also to be the featuring artist, because I didn't touch anything in our exhibition. I just added something, and when I left, was everything as it was before. So this is something that really opens a new world to me. And now I can show you. Let's see if I can show you something. Because
yes, maybe now it would be wonderful if you make a brief virtual studio visit and show your current.
Yeah, I can show you something that's in like how I work and what my normal day is, and it can be interesting to see. I don't know if you remove this. If I talk, can you see the big screen? Can you see me? Or we seeing Sarah?
We see you very well.
Perfect. Thank you. So now I had something prepared here just to have a backside illumination. These are actually normal sculptures, but I'm going to turn on others. And as you see now, everything goes to dark, but I can turn another one on and show you.
Maybe you can share your screen just to see it bigger.
I don't know how to point that to everyone, so let me see if I can. A moment. Okay. I'm very small, right? Or can we, how do we spotlight for everyone? Like this.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Right? Okay. So I saw a question there about how I achieve color, and it's about very easy. I use LED, which already emits color, and what I do, I mix them, like if they were painting, like oil paint. It's actually the same. And then it depends about lenses and how you use the strength, you can achieve one color or the other. So in this case, it's blue and red. I have my screen, my setup here, and what I normally do, and this is a sculpture I'm preparing for my next exhibition that's going to be actually here in the studio and in the garage, but mostly in the studio. When I put something and I make it turn, I obtain this kind of effect. I can do actually whatever I want because I think that this is my canvas and I just have to add things or remove things to obtain some kind of sensation I want to give. The main problem probably with my way of working is that a small change, a very small change is a huge change. For example, I have this mirror here. If I just tilt it 1 centimeter, it goes straight. So what I normally do and what I spend my time on is first I choose the colors, then I try to see which shapes I want to do because normally in exhibition I cannot put circles if it's very squared and this kind of things. And then I start doing little adjustments until the effect is what I want. For example, if I just flatten the mirror, it just goes up, it doesn't come back. If I tilt it, it goes down. So I play a lot with my sculptures. I spend a lot of time looking at them. And when I get bored, it's very easy to change everything because this was one, but if I just put a different thing in front, that's maybe with circles, everything changes because now we don't have reflections, but we have solid colors, we have lines. I can start playing with what I do normally is I start playing with these lines because they're like a drawing. To compose, to build, to prepare, to see where the reflection goes, to see how these shapes dialogues between each other. Because as we were talking before about rhythm, a full shape doesn't look at it as the same rhythm as a line. And this is wonderful for me because it means I can play with many different elements. And for example, the same light can, if the lenses are different, can be completely different because I can leave the round one and just leave the whole ambient to have the sculpture. So while removing its limits, I don't limit it and it can go everywhere. But sometimes it's not the only light that's present. Sometimes we have several kinds of lights. So I play also with different colors and see how they goes along together. What happens when I mix shapes? In this case, round and square, I'd never like to mix. I'm kind of a purist. I don't like to mix lines and curves. So I normally turn off one and see what happens with the other one. And for example, I realized I never used, until this year, I never used squares for my projections because I thought they were too harsh. But then I realized that it can be, I can fill a whole wall with a color. So in this case, the wall is becoming yellow. It looks yellow. In reality, I assure you it's not a trick. It really looks yellow and it can disappear. So with these planes, I can move them and play with them in a way that the whole ambient change the color it has. But this is, and it's, for me, the most important thing is that it's light and it's very easy to modify because if I don't want to see this one, I can just remove it. I have the same light. So for example, let's say I want to check how this is very Le Parc, this is caustic, poor, and how a shining thing reacts. So I can add reflections. In this case, it's a kitchen, it's a cake maker, the one to do the cakes, the mold, but it's an element I use a lot because it's shiny, it's round, and it can have a really interesting effect. Also, it's very different if I put vertical or horizontal, because depending where goes the light, where it projects, it can change completely what we have in front. So these things happens every day, and my day-to-day routine is understanding them, seem to be how to be able to replicate them, because light is I said it's beautiful material, I love it, but it's very sincere, and it doesn't allow mistakes, because every little mistake can be seen huge, because this is a very small part, and if I go back, it becomes huge. So I have to take care of these details. I have to take care on how to control it, because if not, I risk to lose it and to give a different effect, because it's so captivating that sometimes it gets too much, and you don't appreciate the purity of light that I wanted to show, because in the end, I want to create something that makes you look and kind of understand, but it's just looking. And to look at something, it must be enough to get your attention, but not too much to distract you. So I'm always playing, when I say playing between visible and invisible, it's this one. It's how do I use my eyes to look, and what am I expressing, what am I showing? And this is very rewarding when you can see it in direct. Like, it's so fast to try something that I don't know how to draw, for example, because I don't need it. Because if I need to try something, I just turn the light on and see what happens. If I want to see, for example, what a plant looks in orange, I just take a plant and put in front of it, and we have a magic, something that happens in front. If I want to see the smaller, the bigger, I just move it. And this is what really fascinates me, that in the matter of a second, I can change everything I have in the room, and I can just turn it on, and everything is different. This action of turning off and on goes back to the artificiality we were talking about before, because this is what makes it artificial. It can be turned off, it disappears. And this goes very well with houses. For example, when I do a sculpture for somebody that has a lot of things in the room, the opportunity to turn it off is very important, because it can occupy 6 meters, 2 meters, 1 meter, or nothing. Because if I don't want to see anymore, it just, for example, if I have the plant and it occupies a lot, if I don't want to see anymore, I just turn it off. And this is, for me, I spend a lot of time in the studio, because it's always interesting. Every day I see something new. And the good thing is that I have to leave the studio. To do the exhibition, I have to go in a place where light doesn't react the same way it reacts here. And this is fantastic, because I never get bored. And for example, now here in Lugano, I'm going to do a studio-specific exhibition, because I realized my studio in Barcelona produces different artworks than the studio here. And when I say my studio, it's me. I don't have a team. It's just me. I do everything. But what I do in the studio in Barcelona, that's small, it's different. It has a different view. It's not the same as what I do here, that I have at disposition a bigger and cleaner studio. So this idea of site-specific goes to the level that what I do in the studio doesn't work outside. I have to go and test it. And this allows me to travel and to see many interesting places, and places that normally an artist is not very welcome. So I just, by my way of not touching anything, a lot of doors open. And pretty much it's this. So, well, on the other side, I built a small showroom. I started to investigate a little bit more in how to do things portable, and I looked at other light designers, and I go around, and I admit I don't go too much of art galleries. I go more to design stores and things because I know what I'm doing graphically and visually. I normally need inspiration on technical, because a very important thing I haven't said in this presentation before is that I never hide the light. I never hide the objects, because I don't want it to be magic. It doesn't have to be a magic trick. This is reality. So everything has to be visible. If not, it looks like I'm doing some kind of trick and it loses its magic. This is not a movie projection. This is real life. If I put the hand in front of it, it's here. It's not something that's hidden. So I had to work a lot on the sizes and the light emitters. So I ended up designing them myself and thinking how they work, how they're seeing the space. So for example, this line of sculptures had, well, they just align, and they're very easy to move. And this is the base for all the adaptation. When I go to an exhibition, I don't bring the nice one. I build them inside, because it's much nicer to do a site specific and build everything inside and then leave no trace. So I ended up having this routine of not bringing almost anything from the studio, just the little thing. Actually, I realized that 1,000 square meter exhibition my exhibition fits in a trolley. And this is something that sometimes it makes me smile, because I think of all the transport and logistic. And for me, I never had to think about having troubles moving my sculptures, because they can be big or small as much as I want, and it fits everywhere. I just need, that's very important, I need a power plug. Batteries are something that I'm working on, but it needs something to be plugged on, because it's artificial light, it's electric light. So by this, I think I said almost everything.
Yes, can you hear us now?
So, yeah, I can remove the spotlight.
Yes, can you hear us? Yes, we are on time and we are receiving a lot of interesting questions. So I'm gonna just send you a last question, and then we're gonna read some of them if we are on time.
Wow, it's a lot. Thank you. Okay, let me go back to my normal screen so you can see my face.
Yes, we don't see you now.
And I can turn on a light probably.
So I have a last reflection to think about your work, and then we're gonna read maybe 2 questions if we are on time. If it's okay, Barbara? Yes.
Yeah, we have 10 more minutes. It's so passionate and interesting, Massimiliano. We could stay here all night, but we are running a little bit out of time. So we just go for a few questions.
Okay, that's it. So.
Okay, I'm reading. I can answer. So we have a few times. So if you want, I read them and I see with the one when I can answer quick. So, okay. Yes. Let's see. Yeah, I can.
Concept of the contemplation briefly in your
okay.
work. Yeah. Jump, maybe just a short question, because I think it's something really important in your work that goes through my research, and I remember it in your sculptures. I mean the idea of astonishment or a sense of wonder caused by the contemplation of certain phenomena. Merlis Merleau-Ponty says that nothing is more difficult than to know what we are saying. So following this reflection, do you suspect that the contemplation of your work can cause a change in the perception of the viewer and the way that we perceive the invisible?
Definitely, and that's why I like doing exhibitions, because when you show somebody how to use the lights, they never forget it. It's like riding a bicycle. So that's what really suits me, and what I really like from showing my work to other people is that when I see them again 1 month or 2 months after, They told me, oh, I changed all the lights I had in my building because they were terrible, or oh, I put that light there and it works. So it's not only a change of perception, it's a change that affect our normal life. So this is, to me, this is an artistic part, but it is also a practical part. And yeah, that's very interesting perception, and we can talk about perception for hours because we never know what it is, and it's a beautiful topic, but we don't have time. And so, okay, somebody asked me if they can buy art from me, and of course. I have let's say I split it into things. I have the gallery that I take care all the sculpture that are sculpture in the real meaning. They're not limited edition. They're just normally it's custom made or almost custom made. And then I'm launched and it's almost ready. I have prepared a website to buy like these ones, the simple ones, to buy them, and they're just lamps. They have the same effect. They are like a sculpture of mine, but they are in a limited edition format. They are in a compact way, so they can be shipped and they can be used like a normal lamp. I don't have any artistic intent, like artistic, how do you say? They don't have to be something artistic and just be a light in the house. But normally, people write me to buy something and end up buying something else because this light is site specific. I can really make a sculpture that's what you want or you prefer. People that prefer to buy and put it there and see what happens, and others that have a dialogue. Normally, a lot of people come to dialogue, so that's also beautiful. And they don't have any special care because in case they just ship, they just plug it and it works. So that's a thing is that that's a nice, interesting question that it's my nightmare. How do you preserve your art? This is a nightmare with LEDs because they can go off without telling anything. They just burn. So in my case, I just leave my phone number and hope they should last, turn on all the year. I have some sculpture that's 3-4 years that they're turned on and they still work. But in that case, there's some maintenance to do, but it's the same maintenance that you do to a light bulb. This is not complex. This is very easy actually, but it's something that's present. And when you talk about the value of my work, I never think that somebody, I don't want to think somebody buy my sculpture because they want to make profit to it. So I sell something and I want people to be happy. So I just think until that it has to work. And if I do changes, it doesn't change its value. It has to be there. So it's not a big problem to me. And well, yeah, the glass, the circles were acrylic glass. I use a lot of plexiglass, and that's material, especially now that there is a possibility to have recycled plexiglass, because sometimes using a lot of plastic is not very good. And as an artist, I think I am obliged to comply to some ethical reasons. So since they started doing a lot of colors in recycled plexiglass, I started using a lot more because, well, plexiglass is amazing. It has transparency. It can fall. It doesn't break. It has a very interesting touch that when it gets scratched, a lot of shadows appear. And this is, normally it's a bad thing, but for me it's beautiful to see the pass of time in the plexiglass. And turning mechanism is very simple. It's a motor. It's similar to the one that they used in the disco ball, but it has a different rhythm. It's custom made, but it's not a very complex thing. I try to maintain all my sculptures free from electronic, so they don't depend on delicate things. I wanted them to be very sturdy, and that if power light goes off and comes back, they still work, because if not, that doesn't exist. And for anything else, I'm very happy to answer to everybody. Just write me a mail or a message in Instagram, whatever. I always try to find time to share something I really like. So don't be afraid to do any other questions, because I'm very happy to answer all of them. I can, well, that's it. I can turn the light off, I think. Like,
A performance.
yeah, no, it's not performance. This is what I do every night, and it's rewarding because it feels like I did something. And this is one is here, and this one is here. So yeah, now it's empty.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Massimiliano, for this fantastic insight into your art. Sarah, thank you for animating such an interesting conversation. Today, we have learned how light, shadows, and elements can interact to create sculpture and artistic emotion. Before leaving you tonight, may I remind you our website address, theartcircle.ae, where you will find a replay of our webinar, but also general information about the Art Circle. You can also follow us on Instagram at theartcircle.ae. On behalf of the Art Circle board, I would like to thank you all for coming tonight. Stay safe and see you next week with Studio Drift. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for inviting, and was very nice to be in a room with a lot of people.